everyone, welcome to my channel, Scrapbookaholic, and today we're going to be making a 6x8 album with a little bit of interaction, but we want to keep it fairly simple. I did do this album a little while ago and I want to make some adjustments to it. So I like the size of this album though. It's great for on a coffee table and great to give away to grandma and grandpa. Mostly grandma though, right? If we're being honest, of a little brag book. So I'm gonna get started. I'm gonna do a little bit of navy or kind of darker blue with a light pink, and I'm kind of getting my inspiration here off of this Midnight Garden that I got from Recollections, just from Michaels. So this is available right now. It's 2020. You can either go and get this and follow it along exactly, or you could just apply this technique to your own album. That would be just fine as well. So I'm gonna put that off to the side for now. So we're gonna start first with the construction. Oh, and I just wanted to point out too, I found these rose gold sheets, 65-pound cardstock at Michaels as well, and I just think it's absolutely gorgeous and it's going to go so well with this album. So first we're going to start with the cover. So I'm going to grab my chipboard, and these chipboards here I get in my paper pumpkin. So not all of you are, belong to Stampin' Up's Paper Pumpkin, but I do like to receive them every month. I'm not a big stamper, so it's nice to get a little, package. I guess I'm giving a little plug. I don't even sell this, but anyway, inside there's always a 9x6 cardstock, or chipboard I should say. So that's what I'm using here. If you don't have that, then just go get a big sheet of 12x12 and use that instead. So I'm gonna grab my paper trimmer. So we're gonna cut these all down to size. So you're gonna need 2 pages of 6x8. So these are already 6 inches wide and they're 9 long. So I'm just gonna trim 1 inch. But before I do that, I'm gonna change my blade out. I just have an older blade that I put a clip on the end, and then that way I know this is my chipboard page, or my chipboard trimmer. If you have a trimmer at home, I do recommend getting having an extra blade for this type of thing. If you use a brand new blade on here, you're going to dull your blade in a hurry, and it's going to make it so that when you go to cut paper, it's actually going to ruffle the edges. There we go. So now, in order for me to be able to cover my whole album, I'm going to need to join 2 together. Just like that. I'm just going to make sure that this is going to be enough. So the next thing I'm going to do is join my 2 papers together. And I'm just going to do that with some liquid glue, just like that. And then you're going to line one page up with the other, overlapping by about, I'd say a ½ inch is more than plenty. There we go. And if you need a straight edge, you can go ahead and use the edge of your desk, or you could use the edge of your paper trimmer or your scoreboard, whatever you have. All right, so let's make sure this is all going to fit. Perfect. And we don't need that big of a lip on this side because we are going to be covering it completely anyway. So I'm going to start with the center piece, and this time though I'm going to use some scored tape or double-sided tape. So these are all taped up now, and we're going to go ahead and just put them on our cover. So I'm just going to use this little tool. If you have something else that works, then great. So just removing all the tape. Now you have your seam here, so just try and make sure that your center spine is along that seam. And then we're just going to kind of eyeball it up and down just to make sure it's straight, and press it on. And then when you go to do your cover, and I've talked about this before, but in case this is the first video you've seen, you're going to go ahead and grab some of your scrap boards. So I'm just going to take 2 scrap chipboards and place them there as a guide, just to give you enough spacing. If you wanted to measure that out, you most certainly could, but I find it's perfect to do it that way. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this together. All right, so these are all put together. So the next step that you're going to do is we're going to get the cover ready to be, I guess, bent. So for this step here, I'm just going to grab my bone folder. And what I like to do is I like to just kind of grab the edge, kind of lift it up a little bit, and then press it down along the side of my hand. And then what I do is I'll take the bone folder and I'll just rub it along the edge. So this is just kind of creasing that paper, and then I'm going to fold it all the way over and crease it again. So we're not actually folding this over, we're just kind of preparing the paper. So paper does need a little bit of maneuvering. So I'm going to do that with this guy here. And then again with the bone folder, that just gives it a nice crisp edge. And then folding completely over. So I'm just going to do that to all the sides. So once we've kind of creased those all and got them ready, we're just going to apply some double-sided tape. And I'm going to use, this is just what I have, is a 1/2 inch tape, or 3/8 of an inch, I think. So I'm just going to put one kind of on the inside next to the chipboard, and then the other on the outside. If you wanted to fill it all in the middle, you certainly can. I find there's not much reason for doing that. So if you get like me on this side here and you've got just a short amount of space, then just use a smaller size as well. Or what you can do is put one down and then peel it off and then put another one over top of it. You just can't put them over top of each other while they're still peeled, or while the backing is still on. Now that's all done, you're going to take a ruler and you're going to make a diagonal mark. So here's the end of my chipboard. I want to come about a good 8 to 14 or 1/4 inch, an 1/8 to 1/4 inch out, and then you're just going to draw a line. It doesn't have to really be in place there, but you just want to be able to know that you're trimming away from the chipboard. So once that's done, you're just going to grab your scissors and you're just going to cut that area away. Now I did put the tape down first and then cut, just because it's a lot easier to get right to the edge with your tape. So now we're going to go ahead and fold these over. So I'm going to grab my tool and remove the tape from the long side. And I always like to start on the longer sides and then work on the outsides. So you're going to start, you're going to go in the center, and you're going to kind of pull up nice and tightly as you come over. It should be very easy to do because we've already folded the sides. So I'm going to do that to all the sides. So now for these side edges, one thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take your bone folder or your fingernail and just tuck these corners in into the very corner before you go ahead and flip it up. This is just going to give you a cleaner line. There we go. And it's going to make sure that you don't have the really super pointy, sharp corners. And then make sure that you burnish all the edges. There we go. So as you can see, it's quite a nice edge there. So next we have this all covered up, but we have a very stiff piece of board. So we need to kind of coax the paper to want to bend. So I do that just by very gently rubbing back and forth with my bone folder into the crevice, and then gently bending it and making sure that we're not buckling anywhere. So I bring it all the way over, and then I do the same thing with the other side. If you just go right in and bend, you're going to have some buckling happening on either side. So now the book folds nicely all on its own, and we're going to get started with the pages. So you can, I have done this as well before, where I've just gone through on all of the edges and just giving them a crisper line. And you can do that on top here as well, and you can just go through all over wherever you feel like needs to have a bit of a crisper line. There we go. So the next thing I'm going to work on is the hinges. And for this, you're going to need a piece of paper that is 7. And I'm just leaving my 8.5 just as it is. Of course, hang on to your scraps. You never know when you're going to need them later. And I'm going to grab my scoreboard. So we're going to score, and we're just doing some hinges. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to come in by 1.5 inches. If it was a larger album, I'd go to 2, but I'm going to come into 1.5 inches, and then I want to have a 3/4 inches coming up onto there. So I'm going to go from 1.5 to 2.25, and then I need it to come back down. So I need another 3/4 of an inch, which would put us at 3. And then I want a 1/2 inch gusset, so 3.5. So then we're going to go back to a 3/4 inch, so that's 4.25, 5, 5.5, 6.25, 7. And we are doing 4 pages on this one, so each one of these 3/4 inches will be 1 page. So we have 1, 2, 3, and we need 1 more. So then we need 7.5, giving us that 1/2 inch gusset. And then we need 8.25, and then 9. And then the rest of this will be the flap that's going to be held in place. So then to assemble these, all you're going to do is take the first 2. So we have our first 2 markings, and we're going to just pinch those together. And then we're going to skip this next one and then go to the next 2 3/4 inch pinch or score marks. And then we're going to leave that 1/2 inch gusset, and then we're going to pinch up and then pinch up. So then that gives us 4. And I'm going to fold them back and forth here just to make sure that they're pliable. So then that gives us 4 pages, just like that. So on the back side, you're now going to put some glue on the inside of those pages. So I'm just going to use some liquid glue to put this together, but if you want to use your tape, your double-sided tape, by all means. So there you have it. So then you're going to want to put this aside for a little bit and allow it to dry if you're using liquid glue. If you're using the tape, you could just go straight into putting this into your album. But I'm going to put this off to the side and work on the pages instead. So for the pages, we're going to do pocket pages. And so your pages that you're going to need, so we're going to cut those next. You're going to need 4 pages that measure 5.5, which is the width of our sheets, by 7.5, and 4 at 5.5 by 8.5. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut all those. Now that those are all cut, I'm going to go ahead and score the 8.5 sheets. So I'm going to put the 7.5 off to the side, and we're going to score these at 1/2 inch and 8 inches, or 1/2 inch on both sides. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And then on each of the 1/2 inch flaps that I've just scored, I am going to put on some tape. So now before I assemble the pages, I'm just going to take my scissors and I'm going to just cut a small piece, like a little triangle, off the edges. So I'm just going to kind of snip off there, and I'm going to do that to all of the, from the score line just to the edge, just on the 8.5 sheets. So now it's time to assemble the pages. So I'm just going to take my first one and I'm going to fold it so that the tape side is on the folded edge. And then I'm going to just remove a part of the tape, just like that. And then I'm going to place the 7.5 one over top. So we're lining up our corners, and if you have your 3 corners lined up, this one will line up as well. There you go. And I just take a small amount of the tape off just to have access. And once those are all lined up, you just go ahead and pull that tape. And then on the other side, it should already be ready to go. It should already be lined up because you lined it up the first time. Having issues with this tape today. And then you're going to kind of press it in from the center and then over. If you're not holding on to it just so, you'll have a really big bubble, and we don't want that. We want it to lay nice and flat. So I'm going to continue to do that with the other 3 pages. All right, so all the pages are done. We have our 4 pockets here. And we are going to be doing landscape ones. So I'm going to set that just off to the side here. So now we get to assemble all the fun parts of the page. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to add a flap that folds open. So I'm going to want a page that is 6 inches. And we're going to keep our scraps. 6 inches by 7.5. All right, so that's going to be scored and put on that side there. So we're going to take it on the 6-inch side and we're going to score it at 1/2 inch. And then for this one here, I did want to add a decorative border. So I'm just going to take my trimmer here, and before I assemble it onto my page, you can use whatever you have. There we go. So I'm just going to put this in place, and I'm just going to cut just enough to say that I'm making a wave. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to assemble that onto our page, and I do want the flap to flip outward, so I'm going to put some glue down, or some tape I should say, on the flap. So now this flap ends up being our hinge. And burnish that down. And then I'm going to pull this off. So my trimmer that I do have is from Creative Memories, but you could easily just trace it out and put it on, or just leave it, or if you have an edge puncher, you could definitely do that instead. So I'm lining up the corner, and just like we did the other pages, I just took a small flap off, making sure that it's straight, pull it, and then there we are. So it's going to have a little bit of fun dimension to it. So when I add the other paper, I'll cut it the same way. And on the inside, I wanted to put a pocket. So I'm going to go and grab the one we just cut from, and we're going to, actually I'm also going to wave this one. So I'm just going to bring it just in before I put it down. There we go. Now I use that wave cutter quite a lot when I'm scrapbooking. So this page here will need to measure 6.5 and then trim off that excess. And then we're going to score 1/2 inch all around on 3 sides. So I'm going to start on the flat side and score it 1/2 inch, and then flip it and cut it and score it at 1 inch, or sorry, 1/2 inch, and then at 6 inches on this side, or if you wanted to, you could flip it around and do the same. Then I'm going to trim the corners off, just like we did before on our pages. And then I'm going to just rub these down and add some tape, and then put my pocket in place. So now I'm going to put the pocket in place, and I'm just going to kind of line it up at the bottom corner. And then I want to make sure that on this side here, we're just to the inside of the score line. If you are touching it, your flap will no longer fold. So just like that. And burnish it down. So there we go. There's our first page. Super simple. And now we're going to move on to the back side of that page. And this one is going to be a mirror to the next one. And it's going to be a double accordion. So I'm going to take an 8.5 by 11 and I'm going to cut it in half. So I have 2 pages that are 5.5 by 8.5. And I'm going to need 4 of those. So I'm going to cut that one more time. And while I have my paper trimmer out, so I'm cutting these right in half at 5.5. While I have my paper trimmer out, I'm going to do the other 2 for the next page as well, because that will be mirrored. So those 4 are cut. I'm going to set those aside for our next page, and we're going to move into this page here. Now from our scrap pieces, I'm also going to need a 1-inch piece, which we cut 2 of those off of the for the page pieces. So we're going to use those next, and you're going to cut those in half at 5.5. So you'll have 4 pieces measuring 1 inch by 5.5, and you're going to take 2 and put them aside for the next page as well. And then we're going to go ahead and do our scoring. So I'm going to score these hinges at 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to score these 4 in half completely. So it's an 8.5 piece, so I'm going to score that at 4 1/4. Actually, my apologies. You only needed to do 3 sheets, so I'm going to have 1 extra. So now that they're all scored, you're going to fold them, and we're going to start attaching our hinges. So I'm going to take one of the hinges, and we're going to apply some tape. Again, you're going to stay away from the actual score line. And I just find it much easier to do it this way and then bend them later. So I'm going to just take my sheet and I'm going to line it up on both sides. And then press it down. And then I'm going to grab my next sheet and do the same thing. And again, you could line this up on your edge if need be, if you need to make sure that it is straight. And I'm just going to trim a little bit off of here. Sometimes the cutter just doesn't quite cut 100%, and sometimes it's the paper. Actually, you know what? We only needed 2 pages, so I'm going to save that for the next one. And I'm going to attach the tape to this next hinge. I had on my notes 4 sheets written down, but I think it was 4 sheets total of the cut ones, not 4 sheets of 8.5 by 11. So my apologies on that. So I'm just going to take one side off and attach my paper. There we go. So now I'm going to fold them all together. So we're going to do, well, we started on this side. So you do a valley, mountain, or zigzag. There we go. And then however you want the page to open, that is where the side you're going to put the hinge onto. Okay, so I want mine to open out and away. So I'm going to put this on the wrong side. So I'm just going to leave that there for when I put the paper over top. And I'm just going to add a piece on the opposite side. So just remember that when you're putting it on your last piece. And then I'm going to fold it. There we go. So we're going to grab the first page that we did. So that's, and we're going to just flip it over. And then I'm going to peel a little bit of this paper off. Just like we've done before. And then I'm just going to kind of let it fall open. And I'm going to just place this centered, just eyeballing it though. And then coming in just ever so slightly onto the page, not very far at all. And then I'm going to, that moved on me. That's okay. And then I'm just going to press it down with my bone folder. So now these guys are going to need some magnets, otherwise they're going to keep popping up. So I'm going to place a magnet on this side here. So for the magnets, I am going to use 6mm magnets, and I'm going to need some tape. So I'm just going to grab some of my double-sided tape and grab a magnet and kind of place it. I don't want it too close to the edge because then it'll give a bump to my paper. So kind of coming in a little bit, placing it down, and then burnishing the tape. And then I want this to be on this side over here. So on this side here, I'm going to just throw my magnet down, and then that way I know it's lined up and it's the right side, because we don't want it to be the opposite sides. Then I'm going to just pick it up, place it on my tape, and then let it catch back into place. And then I'm just going to close this over top of it. And then when I open it, it will be where we want it to be. So then it closes and will magnetically hold in place. If you're finding that it's not closing quite well, you can put another magnet on either that side or even on the inside here. So I might just go ahead and do that. The more magnets you stack, the stronger they do get. There we go. I just really want to make sure that it is closed for when we are hinging open the door. Now when we do hinge it open, as you can see, it does fall open. So we are going to need a magnet down on the back side. So I'm going to first put a magnet on this side. I don't want the magnets to be always on the same side of the paper, because then it gets to be too bulky. So I don't want one on this side again, because we already have the other one there. So placing a magnet there. Oops. And then again, lifting it up. Placing it down and close it up. So if that's strong enough, then perfect. I'm just going to leave it as it is until we get everything all assembled, but I may find that I want another magnet on that side as well. So we're going to move on to, so that's page, or the first signature, so pages 1 and 2. So next I'm going to work on page 3, and it's exactly the same as the page that we just did. All right, so when I went to go ahead and attach this one, I did bring the other one into it because I do want them to match up. If someone does flip them over, they should match up. And now I'm just going to go ahead and put the magnets on just as I did on this other one. All right, so we're all done page 3. Now we're going to move on to page 4. And with page 4, I just wanted to do 2 single flaps. So I'm going to take those pages that I had cut from the other one we just did. I'm going to trim those both down to 7.5. I'm going to score them both at 1/2 inch on the long side. So I'm doing 2 here because one is going to be for this page, page 4, and then one will be for the next page, which will be page 5. So I'm going to put that one off to the side. And we're going to go ahead and put some tape on that. And I'm going to run it through the swiveler thing as well. And while I have this out, I am going to do the same thing to the other page. Now we're going to go ahead and attach the page. So this is my outside, this is my inside. So I just want to make sure that the flaps will be opening up opposite of each other. So I'm just going to place this down right along the edge, just as we've been doing, with a little tab out. Make sure that it's lined up and pull it apart. And then I'm going to add a magnetic closure on this side because we want to make sure that they do stay closed. So that's going to go right here. And again, another magnet. Now for this album, I don't find that you need very strong magnets, but if you do find that you need stronger ones or you have them on hand, just go ahead and use them. There we go. We happen to hit the magnets on the other side as well. So that's done. Page 2 and 3 are done. So pages 1, 2, 3, and 4 are done. So we're gonna just do another one similar to that, but opposite. So grabbing our next page and our already wavy sheet, I'm going to add some adhesive and then do the magnets just like we finished on the other one. So we're just going to start page 6, and 6 and 7 are going to be a double waterfall, and we're going to want 3 pages. So I'm just taking an 8.5 by 11, cutting it in half. We have, I have 2 scraps of those already. So I'm going to cut those both at 4 1/4, and so that gives me 4 pages, and I'm going to need 3 for each side. So we're doing the mirrored again. So I'm going to take these 3 and put them aside. And then I just need 1 more set of 2. So I'm just taking another cardstock, cutting it at 5 1/2 and 4 1/4. There we go. And then while I'm here, I'm going to also cut my flaps for those. So I'm going to cut this at 2 inches. So this is my 5 1/2 sheet, cutting it at, I'm going to do 2 1/2. I want it to be a little bit more substantial. So 2 1/2 and another one at 2 1/2 for the other side. So now we're going to score these, and we're going to put these just like that. Okay, so they're just going to layer on top. So I'm going to score these, and I may find that I might do a little bigger ones, but we'll see as we go. So I'm going to score these at 1/2 inch or at 5. I just prefer using that side because I'm right-handed. And we're going to put some tape on each of these. And we're going to do the same thing we've been doing. Take a small piece off, line them up. So this one you want to make sure that you're centered roughly on the page and that you're right on the top. And that you're straight all the way down as well. So along this edge, remove, and then we're just going to do that with the remainder. And I think that because I cut these ones a little shorter than the other ones I did, I'm going to take 1 more and do each page at 4. So this will help minimize your scraps as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and put those together. All right, so here's the waterfall all assembled. So the next thing we're going to work on is our closure. So I do have that page left, or that piece left over from before. I'm just going to kind of line it up and see where I'm at, but I'm just going to score that one. So this is a 5 1/2 by 2 1/2 piece, and I'm going to score that at 1/2 inch. I'm going to do the same for that other one for the next page, just to get it ready. And then I'm just going to put some glue down on this guy, or some tape I should say. And then we're going to go ahead and line that up with the bottom, making sure that we're about centered with the waterfall. And then we're going to add our magnetic closures. So I'm going to do the exact same thing on the next page. So that finishes up page 7, and we're going to move on to page 8, which will mirror the back cover. And this one here, I'm going to cut a piece of paper at 6 inches by 7.5. While I have my scoreboard out, I'm going to score that at 1/2 inch. And then take my fancy trimmer and while I have the trimmer out, I am going to take the scrap piece again from the one we just cut, and I'm going to do the edge as well. For the inside pocket. All right, so we're gonna just assemble this just as we did the very first page, with adding tape to the flap. Line it up. And same with the inside pocket. So the page inside measures 5.5. So we'll need our page to measure 6.5. And then we're going to score 1/2 inch on all 3 sides. And now we're adding the magnetic closure, just like that. So now we have all 4 of the pages done. So I'm going to assemble it into the book and do the front and back covers. So the first thing to assemble it all we'll need to do is the hinge mechanism. And so I'm just going to apply some glue to the back, and I do prefer to use liquid glue for this, but if all you have is tape, that's fine as well. Just gives us a little bit of wiggle room when putting it in place. All right, so we're going to put this in place, and we're just going to kind of judge where the center is on the album, as well as front or up and down. And we want to make sure that our hinges are about centered on the spine. So go ahead and press that down. And then be sure to press down individually into each of the gussets. And then if a bit of glue has come out, then just be sure to wipe that free. Oops. There we go. And then you're going to take your bone folder and you're going to run it along right where this, the binding kind of meets, just to give it a little bit of help to bend it. And we're going to do the same on the other side. Now, when you're using the wet glue, be sure not to press too hard because you will break through the paper. There we are. So now we're going to go ahead and attach double-sided tape to the pages. And you're going to want to put this right on the very tip of the page. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch. And you need to do that on both sides of the hinges. So I've gone ahead and attached the adhesive to both sides of each of the hinges, and we're just going to go ahead and put the pages in place. So to do that, I'm going to take off a little bit of the backing, just as we've been doing before. And then you're going to open up your pocket page to the center, placing it in over top of your hinge. And then what you're going to want to do is make sure that your page is straight along the bottom and the top of your album, and also that there's a bit of a space just along that side. So I'm just going to line that up, and then that way, if your hinges are slightly crooked, your pages can kind of compensate for that. And then you're just going to gently pull the page once it is straight. And then you're going to just pull it out from the bottom, from the underneath, and press it down. So I'm going to just go ahead and attach the rest of the pages in that same way. So now that we've got both pages assembled, I'm going to go ahead and work on the front and back covers. These are going to be a little bit larger than our pages. So I'm just going to bring in my cutter. And the back cover is 6 by 8. So I'm going to cut this one at 6 by 7 3/4. And then I'm going to use that leftover page, and I'm going to cut that at 6 3/4. That's going to give us our pocket page. Then I'm going to take the wavy tool. And of course, if you have like a scallop edge, you could do that. Or if you just wanted to omit it completely, that's totally fine and up to you. So now that I've scalloped the edges, I'm going to go ahead and score. So this is the pocket. I'm going to score it at 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to score it at 1/2 inch. And then 6 1/4 on this side. You could easily flip it over, and then don't forget to trim out the corner pieces. And then this one here just gets 1 score. This is our larger sheet, and it's going to get a score mark at 1/2 inch. I'm just going to go ahead and fold these and then put tape on each of these folded edges. So before we get too far with assembling this cover, I did decide that I wanted to cover it fully with a piece. So I did cut a piece that measures 5 3/4 by 7 3/4. And I'm just going to place this with some tape over top of the back corner, or sorry, the back cover. So I've gone ahead and done both the front and back cover. And now I'm going to just go ahead and assemble our pages. So I'm going to put on our flap first. our outer flap. So again, we're going to remove partial of the flap and line it up with the inside cover. And then we're going to put our pocket in on the inside. So I'm just going to line up this edge here and make sure that we're just on the inside of the score line, and then straight on the bottom. And press it down. And then affix the magnet as well on this side. You guys are going to be magnet experts after this album. So for this back page, we're just going to cut a page that is same as the front. So 6 by 7 3/4. And then I scored it at 1/2 inch. Now we're just going to put it on. So on this back side though, instead of doing a pocket like I had been doing, I'm actually going to put in a pull down waterfall. And that is going to be done with the decorating part. So you'll have to come back and watch the video on decorating to watch that, to see that. So I am going to wait to put my magnet on as well. So there you have it. There is the quick and easy album. Super interactive. I think it's very interactive. Anybody who will get this album will just absolutely adore it. Lots of places for putting in photos and photo mats. And then the fun part comes where we get to decorate it. So join me for video number 2 on how to decorate up this album. And hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as check out my wonderful creations on Facebook at Scrapaholic, as well as my Pinterest and Instagram feeds. Thanks guys, have a great day.